apologize to those of you that are going to be looking at this because I didn't turn it on when I should have, but I'm not going to repeat the introduction.
They just all the best.
Okay, you are in Milestone 7, and the title of Milestone 7 is
Passage to Adulthood.
Passage to Adulthood. Okay. Okay. On the sheet that's marked Passage to Adulthood for Milestone 7, there's a sentence in italics. If somebody has that, would you read that for us, please? Starts with the word parents.
Parents with their lives and instruction have the privilege of ushering their teen to live out God's design for manhood and womanhood.
Okay. Parents with their lives and instruction have the privilege. Okay, with your life, with some instruction, and it's a privilege. And you're teaching them about manhood and womanhood. Your children, here's what I would like to find out. Let's go around the room, okay? And if you would just say your name, okay, and then tell us about your children, how many of them you have and their ages. And you got 30 seconds.
So my name is Jacqueline, my oldest daughter is 21, and I have a 17-year-old who has a baby that's 11 months old, and I have a 16-year-old. They're all girls.
I'm Russell. I have two daughters. One's 10, and one's 12. The one 12 is acting like she's 15 or 16, so that's what I am.
I thought you were going to say 22.
Yeah, well, she kind of acts that way sometimes. But yeah. The other one's kind of, she's, it seems to be acting her age, if there is such a thing. But
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jim. I'm keeping the theme all daughters. 3, Rachel is 20, Rebecca's 15, going on 40, and Katie is 13.
Okay.
And I'm the same as him.
You're the same as
Except
him.
my name's Kim.
I am Carissa. I have a bunch of kids, but none of them are birthed by me. I have all your kids, and a ton of other ones.
Yep. Yep.
I'm Crystal. I have, again, 4 girls. The oldest is 17. We had a rough time at 15, but she's doing very well now. I also have an 8-year-old.
Thank you,
I know,
Jesus.
it does pass, hopefully. An 8-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
My name is Cindy. We have 5, 3 boys and 2 girls, 15,
That's
11, 2 or 9, and the littlest is 1.
Okay.
I'm Diana, and I have like around 65 kids, ranging from 13 to 14. I'm a teacher.
Okay. Parent drives up to pick their child up from youth group. And their child comes out, gets in the car, parent's behind the wheel of the car, and a comment comes out of the parent, a question comes out of the parent's mouth, how was youth group tonight? And the response is, good. What'd you guys do? And the answer is, stuff. Stuff. Okay. Okay. I am going to suggest to you, okay, that at that moment between both the parent and the child, there are 2 lies going on. Okay? One of the lies is, I'm now a teenager, and I really don't need to talk to my parents about what's going on in my life. And that's a lie, and the source of that lie is the devil himself. The other lie going on is, oh well, they're a teenager, and that's just the way it is with teenagers. They're not going to talk to me anymore. They're going to talk to everybody else but me. They're both lies, and the source of those lies is the devil himself. And so we're going to talk about some things today that I think are gonna help us to understand why they are, and then maybe some very practical things that we can do. Okay? I would like you to okay, yes, spouses, then you guys can work together, and then there's two people here and two. Why don't you guys make it you mind making it a group of three? And Russell, you can work with these guys. And then you could come over here and, let's see, we'd have then two. And then if you just come over here and make it three. And I'll do this so you can use mine. And here's what I'd like you to talk about. Okay? Okay. In that passage to adulthood, parents with their lives and instruction have the privilege of ushering their teen to live out God's design for manhood and womanhood. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. We're going to talk. I want you to talk about what's God's design for manhood. What's God's design for womanhood? What is it? And just, here's what I'd like you to do. The 3x5 cards, and there's pens for you to be able to use. I would like somebody to take notes, okay, in your group, and I would like someone to be, it doesn't have to be the person that takes the notes, but I want somebody then to be the spokesperson. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes, okay, and I know that's not a whole lot of time to talk about that subject, but throw some things down. What is God's design for womanhood? What is God's design for manhood? What do you think it should look like?
I think you see a lot for manhood in the Bible, and all where man is the leader and the protector of the family.
Yes.
And the provider.
Maybe womanhood could be taking care of the family and facilitating the emotional needs. Like the man takes the practical and the woman takes the emotional.
Teach your children. I also think dependence on him, so that there would be strength. And if that's encouragement that I'm not strong enough to do life on my own,
But if they're not like,
not that I need a man or that I need a woman.
God doesn't like have a family,
How to overcome
have them like a woman that she doesn't have. She's not gonna have a family, maybe it's on her. God wants to have just her to be single or something, so maybe other people or something like that.
I think that would be the most accurate version.
Yeah, it's kind of both sides. I guess it's still
Since we're creating God's
like man. Still, I guess he wants him to lead in other ways, but women's role in that kind of scenario, I think.
That's a good question.
I guess still in a support role, or whether or not it's in a marriage or just in a community or in a
Right.
larger idea of a family, church family, whatever. It's still think the roles can be similar as to a family.
Yeah, because we can provide love, support, help, or whatever to strangers, and it's
I mean, it's got a good example right there. I mean, Carissa the youth program.
There's a lot of really perfect genders, like for manhood, God would have a specific design for like leadership.
it's pretty clever. God did it in our lives, however we live it.
That as men, right.
These are more
Right, but there's still an absolute element of
whatever they're doing, but then maybe there's, which I don't know how you quantify that, but obviously they're gonna have some calling on their lives,
specific or not. I don't like how that sounds.
which could be, I don't know, missionary,
That there would be roles.
nurse, or mother, or whatever, so how do you?
I come from a Catholic religion. Of course, the first thing I thought of when you said that Mary was nuns.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And one of my best friends from high school was a nun, or was a nun. She actually left, but.
About 1 more minute.
Specific calling.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
I think joy too. There would be a joy. This is what I do. Like this is what I've been created to be. There would be a moment of celebration and joy in that. This is the cup first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, stop. Turn your 4x6 card over. Okay, so you're on a new side. Okay, all right. And here's what I'd like you to talk about. Why are you here today? And you can just brainstorm that. Okay. What I already, I'm here in this one, in this passage to adulthood. I'm in this one because that's why I'm here today. I came to this session because, and just start talking about that and just put some things down. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes.
With each other? Or?
Yeah, well, you can talk about it with each other, and whoever's doing the writing can.
It sounds like ours is very similar. Of the age and.
Yeah. We have, our 13-year-old is still, I think she's okay for now, and she's buildable. Our older two are, well, our middle one is actually, she's pulled away from God. She's announced to us that she doesn't know what God she believes in. And I'm hoping what she means by that is what she believes about God, not which one. But she doesn't believe that the Bible is written by man and that they can write it any way they want us to think. Well, we believe it is absolute truth, but we're really struggling, and she's the kind of kid, our middle one is the kind of kid that the more you lead, the more she pulls away. So we're afraid to do nothing, but we're afraid to do something.
How old is she?
13 or 15, the youngest is 13.
And our 20-year-old, she hasn't pulled away from God.
Got about 1 more minute.
But she's not committed to too much.
Past that.
Like I said, my daughter's only 12, but she just turned 12 back. And she kind of moved up a little bit in the church youth group because she was kind of getting bored in what she was in, but she just she wants to be famous, she wants to be this. She actually said the other day she just wants to move to California, and she wants to move away from home, she's Cambridge, so she can see her family. And she has these aspirations, but she doesn't really want to do anything about it. I mean, she has all these things that she wants to do, but she doesn't want to put the work in to do
Right, she just wants to walk on stage and just be it.
Be famous or I'm gonna be whatever.
Sounds like she's in a rush to grow up, but doesn't understand or doesn't want to put the work in just to do it.
She wants, on one hand, she wants to rush to grow up, but then on the other hand, sometimes she'll show, not necessarily immaturity, but things of her age or younger, and I'm talking about like, she plays with, not just she plays with dolls, but just things that she does with her younger sister and stuff, so.
Okay. Second question first. What did you write down? Why are we here today?
Sure. We were talking about the idea of wanting to educate ourselves, prepare ourselves for what's coming, and to seek God, ultimately God's plan for children. So like having kids that are either on the verge of full-blown teenager or are already in it. So just really trying to prepare and to seek God's voice ultimately. And then how to work through like the mess of life, like if things are already kind of, so working through the mess of it, and then to juggle and manage the different hearts of our children. So there's different choices
Different
being made.
hearts?
The different hearts of our
Okay,
children.
yeah,
So the idea that there's some kids are making the right decisions and some kids are making maybe dodgy decisions, or just what. So how do we juggle that as parents, as people who are in the lives of children?
Okay.
So, and then responding with God's heart in that.
Mhm.
So it's not just about what we would want for our kids. It's, okay, God, what are you doing?
All right. Why are you here?
I did. I think that was pretty close to what we're doing.
Okay, let's hear it. We can hear it over and over again. What'd you write down?
We had to write everything down. We just
Okay.
said it in vocals. I think the similar things of like obviously we are parenting in some way, shape, or form people of this age that there's like questioning, and so just trying there's a lot of why.
Personally, with my 17-year-old daughter, there's a lot of questions of why is God's wrath so strong in the Bible? Why? I don't understand how he can be that way and be so loving in the same way. So I'm here to try to understand how to communicate with her and keep her going towards God. And she just has a lot of questions.
Okay.
Once she comes to youth group and gets a lot of answers, but always questions.
Sure. And that's great.
Yeah, and
That's great. When they stop asking questions is when, at least when they ask questions, you know where they are.
Yep.
Okay, go. What you got?
We're very similar in our situation, similar but a little bit different. And just what you just said just sort of struck me right away when they stop asking questions, because that's where we are with our middle daughter.
Mm-hmm.
She's sort of right now moved away from the church. We can't get her to go, and it's like she's like the best arguer in the world. She should be a lawyer because she's going to be great at it. And we're just looking for ways to break through. She feels the Bible is written by man, so it's flawed, and she doesn't know where she stands. She's a good moral person, and I have no problems with that. It's just her spiritual side. So we're hoping something comes out of this weekend to help us decide how to break through without pushing her away. Because the more we ask, the further away she pushes herself. But Russell, it's more like his daughter's a little bit younger. Ours is 15. His is 12. And she's just sort of like in a rush to grow up, pushing all the limits, having high goals, but not willing to put the work in. Different because she attends the youth group, so I think there's a great positive influence there. And I wish we could have gotten Rebecca interested in that kind of stuff, but she just rejected it.
You said Rebecca's 17?
15.
15.
Now, just to add, my daughter, I didn't say this to them, but I think my daughter, I can see that same tendency in her. She's only 12, but she wants to make her own decisions, which I know this is part of it. She's in this thing where she doesn't, like you said, she doesn't want to talk to us about things or thinks she knows it all. And my worry is that she's sort of going to question her faith and stuff like that. And she does go to youth group. And I don't have any I'm glad of that, but some of she was on the borderline. She shouldn't technically be there yet, so she's having some influences from some older kids, and I'm not sure all that is good. Because she's getting into, there's gossip, girls stuff, but there's all that kind of stuff that worries me sometimes. Yeah,
middle school's toxic.
Right. So,
It's awful.
she goes to the youth group. She's 12, and I think most of the kids at the youth group are at least, not that big of a deal, but older, 13, 14, 15 that she's around, and they talk about this person's mad at this person. I'm like, okay, so she's getting this, she's mature in a sense, but she's still getting into a little bit that she's not ready for, I think.
Okay, great. That is good. Okay, let's go back to the first question I asked you. What's God's design for woman, and what's God's design for man? What you guys have?
Oh, you go, you.
Whichever.
I actually found this a hard question to answer for some reason, but we kind of were saying about manhood that to grow them up into leaders and providers, and not necessarily just for a family, but for in their occupation. And I'm not trying to stereotype or anything, but well, it'll be their family or their relationships, and the same with women, more emotional needs and relationships and nurturing.
Okay. Okay. Anything you wanted to add to that? Okay. What do you guys have?
So for us, for manhood, we have authority, leader, and strength. And for womanhood, we have nurturing, loving, and caring. But generally, just as a pyramid, just to follow God and to teach your children how to follow God for both womanhood and manhood.
Okay. And what do you guys got?
We didn't talk with much distinction between the two, because we feel like it looks different, but the call is the same. So the idea of like loyalty, honesty, integrity. So that womanhood might lean more toward nurturing, but that there would also be that in a man as well. The call would be to strength, but that in that strength there would also be this knowledge of I am strong, but I also need God. So there'd be a dependency on God and an acknowledgement of I can be as strong as I can be, but I'm still completely weak when it comes to if I don't have God. That we would be a direct reflection of God because we were made in His image. That we would have a heart after God's own heart. Leadership. So that was something we were kind of talking about maybe with men, that would be a greater, not a higher calling, but like a different calling, that a man's leadership would look different than a woman's leadership, but that both are called to lead, and that in that there'd be joy and celebration, and that there'd be a decision to choose God first in those roles.
Sure, that's great stuff. In Genesis chapter 1. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heaven. Hear any leadership in there, hear any authority in there, and over the livestock, and over the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in His own image. In the image of God He created him, male and female He created them. Somebody made reference to the fact that there is a masculine side to God and there is a feminine side to God, because He created male and female. Nurturing, okay, that you guys brought up, the idea of being able to nurture. Some of you, you're a teacher. Anybody else a teacher in here? You teach? Okay. There's something about a man stepping into a classroom versus a woman stepping into a classroom. First of all, Diana teaches. Okay, her voice and my voice are a little different. Okay, she's a little more high pitched. I'm a little bit. My voice is a little bit lower. Don't ask me why, but it seems like, I substitute teach a lot, and I'll get comments like, wow, they really listen to you, and they don't listen to so-and-so as much as they listen to you today. And I'll say, God created me man, and there's just something about being a man that establishes a level of authority when you walk in, and the gray hair probably doesn't hurt.
Well, I drop my voice when my kids are being out of control. Everyone go into a deeper I'm not pretending to be a man, but there's even that. How responding to
Sure. And there's a little technique like in this tone of voice. If you can hear my voice, clap once. And then usually some kids do, and they'll clap, and it'll be like, if you can hear my voice, clap twice. And guess what? Instead of 2 clapping, now I have 6 clapping. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. And then by that time, the whole class is clapping, wondering why on earth are they doing that? But it's a way, and I just say to them, that's my way of getting your attention. I don't plan to speak to you any louder than I am now all day long. I don't have any reason to do that. So that's a little bit more of a nurturing side. It's a little bit more of a softer side. Could I have stood up on the top of the desk and screamed, "Shut up!" I could have done but little, two different techniques, but probably I like the one if you can hear my voice clap once, and I don't plan to talk any, because and they, by noontime, they're getting accustomed to that. Okay, the book of Deuteronomy, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 6, Hear, O Israel, verse 4. The Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Is that maybe a different way of saying, let's take Jesus and put him at the center of our universe, like we just heard in that opening section? Put God at the center of the universe. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. I like to paraphrase that last part of, when you're doing life, don't be afraid to talk about God. My youngest son, he and I would have a conversation that would go like something like this. He has a particular opinion about something. And then I would say, okay, that's cool. I appreciate that opinion. But you know what? Let me give you God's perspective on what I think God might want to interject here. And I would interject that. And then he'd say something like, you do that all the time. What do I do all the time? You bring God into it. And then I would say, okay. And he said, so how am I supposed to argue with God? And I would banter back and forth with him. I said, you can argue with me. I enjoy listening to your opinion. I may push back against it because I don't think it's right. And I say, but I have to use Rick Lawrence's illustration. I have to splash God on this situation because we need to get that perspective here. And so, whose responsibility is it to talk to your children about God? Is it Pastor Nate's? He'll do that. Is it youth group leaders? They'll do that. But God says it's our responsibility as parents. Are we going to do it perfectly? We are not going to do it perfectly. In a little bit, we'll talk about, I like the perspective and I really want to do things like that, but man, I'm not any good at this. I'm terrible at it. Okay. So there's that one. Now, let's go to the New Testament. Let's go to Ephesians. Galatians, Ephesians chapter 5. We know this one. Talk about here. Let's get it in the right place. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as to the Lord. So there's a picture. Biblical womanhood is there's a picture of submission. Now, my prayer for myself always is, God, I want to be able to be the kind of a husband to my wife that my wife says it's okay, it's safe to submit to him because he leads. And he's looking to you to lead him. Am I going to be perfect at it? No. I've illustrated it with kids before that. If I tell you that I love my wife, and on the way out to the parking lot, before she gets in the car, I give her a slap up the side of the face and yell at her and push her in the car, what are you going to say? Wait a minute. What you said doesn't match what you did. Okay. So wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, for the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church. Verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives, and this is on us, guys. As Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing in water by the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing. Have conversations with my wife and be able to know that it's a safe place, and to be able to trust her with the fact that we need to talk about things that are either not right in our lives or that are right in our lives, and that we encourage one another with. Then, chapter 6 says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is
good,
right, or good. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise. Do you know what the promise is? That it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Who made the promise? Who made that promise?
God.
God made that promise. So is it a good promise? Is it a legit? It's a legit promise. So teach your kids to come under authority. Now, where does that start? What is this, milestone 1? You know, it starts there. It starts there, teaching your kids to be able to do it. Does it make it easier when they're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It does. So, I share those passages of Scripture with you because who has ordained you to be parents or leaders of young people? Who has done that? God has done that. And if he's done that, if it's ordained by God that's the role that you have, here's the good part. Who's going to empower you? God is going to empower you, isn't he? 2 Peter, I got to go to this one. Just in case you're wondering if it says that anywhere. Okay, verse 3, 2 Peter chapter 1. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. And what Rick Lawrence was saying downstairs, through the knowledge of him. He's appointed us to be parents. He's going to empower us. How do I know that? That's what this verse says. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence, by which he has granted to us his precious promises and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature. So, he has given us the power. He has asked us to do it, okay? And he is going to empower us to do it. All right? Now, let's just be some practical things. I just want to throw a few things out to you. One of the things I believe that we need to do with parents as we're preparing our children for adulthood. My prayer for my children goes something like this: Lord, I want you, first of all, to reveal yourself to them. He's going to do a better job at this than I am. When my youngest son went to college, I was a mess. How's he going to do it? He's got some learning disabilities of a minor nature, but nevertheless, it's still going to make it a little bit harder for him. And I know he's got those learning disabilities because we had him tested, and I know where he got those learning disabilities from because he's me genetically. And when I heard the doctor say to him that these are some of the things you're going to struggle with, I went, wow. I wish somebody had tested me 40 years ago, because I would have been mildly dyslexic, just like my son is. But how's he going to do? And I missed him. And I like to ride my bike, and I'd be out riding my bike, and I would have tears coming down, you know, and because I was missing him and I was concerned about him. And God kept saying to me, Frank, who can take care of him better, you or me? Oh, just like my son. I hated God when you do that because I can't argue with you. You know, God, I know it's you. But to let go, and, man. But we need to, somewhere along the line, and the first point I want to make here is that you need to affirm that your children are moving into a new stage of their life. They're moving in, that's part of their moving into adulthood. You know, this milestone is ages 14 to 18, and we got some 12 and so on, and there's going to be some younger and some a little bit older. But they are moving into adulthood. When they were little, you took them by the hand and you led them around, okay? And I love sports, and so this fits well with me. But the older they get, guess what? I'm not dragging them along anymore. What I'm doing now is I'm on the sidelines and I'm coaching. And then comes a time when, whoops, he's at college. I'm not there at all. I'm not even yelling from the sidelines. Wow, I sure hope, I sure pray that God, that I've taught him how to play the game well enough, that I've talked to him about biblical manhood, and so that he can do things like lead courageously and not be afraid to take a stand and so on. So don't be afraid to affirm the fact that your kids are moving into adulthood. They're getting older. The relationship is changing. They are becoming more and more under God's authority and less under yours. You know, the first day they went to school, you didn't go to school with them, did you?
No,
you didn't sit in the classroom. You sure wish you could have. You know, kind of a thing. But now it's the things that you've taught them.
You almost have to teach yourself too.
What do you mean by that?
To take a step back.
Oh
and
yeah.
to let them go.
Oh my goodness, man! Did God and I have a war on our? Did we have a war? You know, when Christopher went off to college, it was like, I'm not there. You know, and God kept saying, but I am, and I'm better than you. You know, and you need to have an age-appropriate relationship. I love dialoguing with, you know, like I said, a 44-year-old and a 22-year-old, and I like dialoguing with all of them. Do we always look at things the same way? No, we don't always look at things the same way. And that, but just the relationship needs to be an appropriate relationship. Things are beginning to change, and then I'm going to share with you some things. But there's new levels of independence for them. Like, you know, they go off to school, and they're making decisions at school. You know, mundane decisions. You know, am I going to sit with the kid that nobody else wants to sit with at the lunch table? You know, am I going to sit with everybody else and we'll sit with them? Or, you know, am I going to do that? Or if the kids are doing this, am I going to do that too? Or am I not going to do that? You know, and so you have to keep going back to, I'm a coach now. You know, I got to teach them how to play the game here. And there's that, there's a change in relationship. And it's an okay change. It's a good change. It's not bad. It's not bad. There are some, I'm going to let you guys take a copy of this. There's a guy in the Christian Missionary Alliance, his name is Bob Urconda, and his wife. They went through some a rite of passage with their children when their children were moving into adulthood. I did the same thing with Christopher when he was younger. Ed Torres did the same thing with his boys. And what's involved with a rite of passage is is you actually have you have a ceremony of sorts. Let me tell you what I did with Christopher. I invited 4 men to join me. We've got a cabin out in the boonies of Millville, and you know, and we went out there and we ate lots of chicken wings and, you know, that kind of thing, and had dinner together and everything. But then after dinner was over, I did not say anything other than introduce it. We played some games together, you know, and they were kind of roughhouse games, you know, where we bumped into one another, banged one another, and, you know, and that kind of thing. Games that men would play. And then after that, we sat down and we got serious, and each of the 4 men that I invited spoke into Christopher's life. And I gave them each a theme to speak into his life. And each one of them did that. At the end, we all gathered around Christopher and we prayed for him. And, you know, I asked Christopher about a week ago, because I knew I was going to be teaching this. I said, do you still remember that time? You know, he's 22 now, and he was about 17, maybe almost 18 at the time. And he said, yeah. I said, do you remember who was there? He could tell me everybody that was there. You know what I did? I mean, I don't know how much of that, all that he heard that day, sunk into him, but I know this, we created a memory, you know, because he knows about that event in his life. Well, these folks have some girls, okay, and so they did the same kind of thing, but when I'm talking about changing relationships, one of the things that they did was they did a thing called a family covenant. And what they did when their kids were going through this particular age, they started sitting down with them. They made up a list first, then they sat down with their son or their daughter, and they talked about it, and they tweaked them if they needed to. They approached it with this attitude. This is the list we're going to make up. This is the list we're going to go by, but we're willing to tweak it. Let's see what they have to say. See the difference in relationship? Give us some input into this. So here are some things. The rights. To decide on her own curriculum and schedule for school. Responsibilities. Respect her mother as a teacher and honor her time and relationship boundaries. They were homeschooling her. Okay? Another right. To establish her own time schedule regarding going to bed, going out with friends, ministry, work, etc. Be considerate and be considerate of the availability of transportation. Be responsible to communicate where, with who, and for how long. Respect the parent's time alone at night. Another right, to express herself, but the responsibility, honor her parents as unto the Lord. To get a job or a home-based business. Responsibility, complete weekly chores as room and board. Coordinate any home business hours with parents. She has the right to say no. Parents will no longer order but make requests. To judge herself. Parents will no longer impose discipline but will negotiate any consequences for violating the covenant as fellow believers, keeping a sister accountable. See the difference in relationship? You're not leading a little kid anymore. You're establishing a relationship with them. To spend time with boys.
After 18, correct? Like she's graduated, and now she's like 18.
You know,
it doesn't look like it because she's still in school.
No, she's still in school.
School and curriculum. What about all this?
She's got to be older though.
She has to be like.
She might have been a little older. I don't have an age here, sorry.
Room and board. I mean, curriculum in school can also be college and activities.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be high school.
Her mom is her teacher?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure her mother is a teacher, so I think it was when she was in high school teaching her there, okay? Now I'm not saying...
Could be like 17.
Okay?
Yeah, I could see
she's
doing with
learning
room and
to-
board with
Yeah.
I had a job when I was 14. So
And she works for me, so
Yeah.
she does kind of do her own home.
Okay. Now I'm not sharing these with you to say that these are all
hard and fast.
right, hard, fast, good things for you to do. I'm just saying, do you hear the tweak and do you hear the conversation going on that, okay, we recognize the fact that you are going to be making decisions on your own because we're not with you all the time. We want to give you some guidelines. And also we need to recognize, because one of the things talked about, there are consequences for making decisions, you know, that you don't hold up to your responsibilities with. They have another one in here. Did a little bit different tweak with the boys to establish his own report to school by 9 a.m. Schedule for schoolwork, parents not discuss school after 3 p.m. unless asked. To establish his own report to school on time schedule regarding going to bed, be responsible to communicate where he will be, and so on and so forth. So what I wanted you to get out of this is not necessarily, oh yeah, we ought to do all those things. It's just somewhere along the line they had a conversation, you know, and they're taught. So that'll be a good resource for you from the standpoint of being able to do something with them. Be able to sit down, husband and wife, come up with some things. These are some responsibilities we want them to have. At around 11 or 12 or so, something like that, we stopped doing Christopher's laundry. Now, not totally. Sometimes if I'm throwing in a load of laundry, you know, and he's got 5 things in his laundry basket, I'll grab it and throw it in with ours. But we did not, it was, the conversation basically was, don't expect us to be doing your laundry for you all the time. Will we do it on occasion? Sure we will. You know, if I've got a half a load and I can throw yours in and make it a full load, I'll do that. And that, but you take advantage, you know, here's how you work the wash machine. Here's how you work the dryer. And then, of course, then that's when you get questions like, well, that's a no-brainer, Dad. What are you showing me how to use the wash machine for? You know, but then we found out after we went to college was I need a little help on exactly how to use this bleach and how much of it do you do to get things white and so on. Okay. What do you think? This is what I throw out there. I told you about a celebration time I had. Ed Torres with his boys. He got some men outside of, he did have a formal get-together, but he had men meet with his boys in other places, and he gave them topics that he wanted them to talk about, like you know, talk to them about, I'd like you to meet with them and sit down and talk about responsibilities. Then Ed sat down and talked to them about sexuality, you know, taking responsibility there. A great book, and I used to have it on my shelf, but I think I loaned it out to somebody on that whole thing. Usually, let me back up. I've been doing a lot of substituting at Buena High School. So when in preparation for this, I wanted to ask the kids some things. So what I asked them was, when it comes to preparing for adolescence, you know, I mean, these are high schoolers, so, you know, all the things that change physically and all the rest with you guys when you move into adolescence. What are some things, first of all, question number 1, did any of you have a conversation with mom or dad? Out of about 50 kids that I was able to survey, 4 had a conversation with mom or dad, okay? Then I shared with them the conversation I had about sexuality with my dad. And it went like this: don't get her pregnant. That was the end of that conversation. Okay. All right. So if only 4 of you had an opportunity to have a conversation with mom or dad, where are you getting your views on sexuality? Health class? All right. So somebody else other than mom or dad are teaching the majority of the kids about sexuality and those kinds of things. And that's our responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to give them a biblical perspective. Now, I'm just going to throw out a few questions for you because I think, kind of making me done with this? 11:30, okay. All right. Some of you, and I'm going to go back to me. My first 3 children, Kimberly, Kevin, and Kelly, I was in ministry. I was an associate pastor at a church, and then I was a pastor at a church. Pastors sometimes live in glass houses. Yeah, you understand what I mean by that? People look at you. I couldn't have my ability to minister judged by how bad my kids were. You know, I wanted them judged by how good my kids were. So guess what I went after with my kids? I went after their behavior. And somewhere along the line, I learned, oops, if you go after just their behavior, you might be able to say jump, and they might be able to say how high, but it's not necessarily coming from their heart. Okay? Dad, you said jump, and I'm jumping on the outside, but I'm sitting down on the inside. And so then I realized that, oh my goodness, I need to be going after their hearts. Because their hearts is their heart. Hey guys, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You know, if you were to have the opportunity to ask Jesus, Jesus, what would be the thing that would show people around me that I want to follow you into all areas of my life? What would Jesus say?
Heart.
Sure. He answered the question already. Remember in Matthew? The religious leader came up to him and said, hey, you know, well, what's the best thing that I can do to show that I love God? Well, you need to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the second answer to the question is love your neighbor as yourself. You know, so love him. Okay, some questions, some things that might be going through your mind. For me, it was like, oh man, I went after behavior and not their hearts. How do I change this? How do I change this? Or I got saved later on. I was, you know, my kids were raised and almost out of the house, and I got saved, and all of a sudden I realized I should have been doing this, and I didn't do it. Oh my goodness. Remember Greg's prayer in there was, you know, please God, I pray against people feeling that it's too late. It's never too late.
That's right.
Okay? All right? Great book. Great book. Okay. So what do you do with broken relationships? I had a broken relationship with my oldest son for a long time. A long time. He didn't talk to me, and I didn't talk to him. And I'd say about 2 years ago, he was coming east, and we got a chance to sit down over at Larry's, and God fixed that relationship, and you know, which was a great thing in our life. Past testimony my past testimony hasn't been consistent. You know, what do I do when I've done things wrong? My oldest son will say this. One of the things that most impressed him about his relationship to me was I was willing to tell him that I was wrong, and that I made a mistake. And you need to be willing to do that. I mean, for someone who has parented someone maybe into their teens or even a young adulthood, and then you come to know Christ, and all of a sudden your world is flipped around, and you start thinking about the things that you did or didn't do that you would like to do over again. Best place to start with that one is to be very honest and say, listen, I've given my life to Christ. I really, want to follow him into all areas of my life. And, but I realize that I really messed up with some things in my relationship with you. And God has convicted me about it, and I need to apologize to you for it. So you're going to have to eat a little crow, but that's okay. That's okay, because who are you trying to glorify? You're trying to glorify the Lord. He's the one that needs to get the glory and all that. Okay. One more last thing. Okay, the 4 foundations that you hear a lot about, faith talks. Give me an example of talking to your kid about faith.
Just using God as an example in whatever situation could be. Like, how is it that your kid's going through something? What is it that God would want you to do, or how, things like that?
Mm-hmm.
That's an example.
Okay.
Just tell them to pray about it.
Tell them to pray about it. I would take it a step further. I would take it a step
Pray
further.
with them about it.
Yeah, yeah. Do parents have needs?
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever ask your kids to pray for you?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they pray for us without us even asking.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little while back, my wife found out that she had some thyroid issues. They've kind of affected, her vision and optics, and the doctors are doing things with that and everything. And she was sharing with us some of the things after she went to the eye doctor and talked to the endocrinologist and everything. And I just looked at Christopher and I said, "Hey, Chris, get on the other side of Mom." I said, "Let's pray for her." So we laid hands on Mom and we prayed for her, and so on. Give me an example of God sightings that you could talk to your kids about, or you have talked to your kids about God sightings.
When God answers a prayer request that was laid already, like if you said, "Pray for me,"
Mm-hmm.
and then you follow up with like, "Well, look what God," or the opportunity to talk to somebody that maybe we had an issue with or a conflict, and what God did in that.
Okay. Anybody else? God sightings.
I just try to, if there's a situation that occurs either in our lives or on TV or even an imaginary, like in a movie or something, just to discuss, how God was involved there and see it's not just some big theatrical performance. I mean, it happens in people's lives, and this is how it is. We have to be open to it.
Yeah, great.
Because we won't see it if we're not open to it.
Sure. Anything else? God sightings. My wife had a severe abdominal infection, and she was being treated for it, and I went to a meeting, got a call from my son Chris, and said, "Something's wrong with Mom, you gotta come home." And so I got in the car and I took off for home, walked in, and her lips are turning blue, she's trembling, she's burning up with a fever. My son had already called, he was 11, he had already called 911, and that. But my sister, who was coming up from North Carolina, was also at the house. She had gotten there while I was gone. I got to talk to Christopher afterwards about it. My sister is a former EMT. Okay, so when Christopher realized this was happening to Lori, he heard the doorbell ring. He ran downstairs. It was my sister, and he looks at her and says, "Something's wrong with Mom." So my sister ran right upstairs. She assessed the situation. Christopher get on the phone, call 911, get the ambulance over here. This doesn't look good, and now that was a beautiful God sighting. I mean, who put my sister wasn't supposed to get there for another 3 hours. They left earlier. What a coincidence! It wasn't a coincidence. That's a God sighting. God put her there. And the other thing in that whole thing was my son then was supposed to tell my sister and brother-in-law how to get to the hospital because I rode in the ambulance. He was 11. He had no clue how to get to the hospital. Debbie Van Zora, I don't know if you know Debbie, but she forgot something at her house and she decided to come down our street to go over to her house. She sees the ambulance pulling away from the front of the house. She stops. She says, "What's going on?" "Well, they just took Mom to the hospital. Dad's in the ambulance with her, and my aunt and uncle need to go to the hospital." She said, "Follow me. I'll take you." What a coincidence! Well, that's a God sighting. That's a guy. Look for what you're seeing God do and share it with them, and then live on mission together. Live on mission together. It doesn't have to be just Taste of Mission Sundays. You've all got neighbors. What is God's plan for your neighbors? That's one of the questions I ask him every once in a while. God, what's your plans for my neighbors? What do you want to do with them? What are some things that we can do to reach out for them, to them? we started a tradition in our neighborhood. Thanksgiving Eve, we make homemade pizzas. We're up to about 40 people coming this Thanksgiving Eve. They come over and have pizza. Some of them are church people and some of them are not church people. And that. So you're doing things like that together. Now, your kids are not always gonna do what you're hoping for them to do. Great revelation, right? They're not always gonna do that. That's why, that's why a book like this, when they turn away, you know, when your kids get old enough to make decisions themselves and they don't always show up at church like you'd like them to, or you know they're doing some things that you wish they wouldn't be doing. My son Christopher did something a couple of weeks ago that he knows is against our standards in our home, and Lori and I were wondering, well, what's he gonna do about this? This is on him now. He came to us the next day and he said, Mom, Dad, I'm sorry, I disrespected you and the things that you stand for. And we certainly accepted that, but I made one more statement to him. And I said, Chris, I said, just remember this. I said, you're never going to do anything or say anything to me or your mom that's going to make us stop loving you. And even bigger than that is that God is never going to stop loving you. You made a mistake. You didn't respect us. Thank you for the apology. And that was the end of the conversation. I do not ever intend to bring that up again. You know, it's not going to be the kind of things but do you remember when, you know. No, that's throwing it in their face. Age of opportunity. This guy wrote this book to be able to let folks know that when you have somebody that turns 13 in your home, it isn't time for you to try to escape or just to ignore them until they turn 20. Mark Twain said, when a child turns 13, you should put them in a box with a hole in it so they can get some air. And then when they turn 21, you plug the hole. Okay. Mark Twain wasn't quite looking at the teenage years or adolescence or young adulthood, wasn't looking at it necessarily as the age of opportunity. This guy is saying there are opportunities galore for you to be able to build your relationship with your kids. Talk to me. Got some questions? What's running through your mind? We'll take just a couple minutes and then I'll kick you out of here. We are going to take a 15-minute break before you go to your next session.
We were talking a little bit, and maybe theirs is a little more drastic or a little more advanced than mine, shouldn't be drastic, but we were questioning, and this always come up in my mind, how to inject our kids, and this really is any age, but I think it gets more important when they get teens because they're making their own decisions and stuff, but we're starting to, how to do that without seeming like you're preaching to them, because it's almost like if you go too far, and I've seen this with other, I was like families in this church, but you know, where you are forcing Christianity or a religion on them, and it's like anything, if you force on them, they're going to reject it. So we're trying to, like, how do you balance that? People that have older kids, I don't know how that, you know, because we heard some bit, I was in another parenting class, and there was some really astounding statistics on how many kids, like when they go off to college and in their older years, how many go away from the church. I mean, it's like way above 50.
Oh yeah,
so
way above.
It's you know, trying to instill like some
And that's what we're
common
going through
values
with our
and stuff.
15-year-old.
Yeah.
She's completely turned off by God, religion. And one time I saw a quote on Facebook and I forwarded it to her. She promptly blocked me from forwarding anything. And it's like, how do I get her back to Jesus if she will hear none of it? And she's like Jim said, we don't have a problem with her in any other aspect of her life. She is a good kid, a good student, and she does make good moral decisions, but she makes them on her own, not with Jesus. And she hasn't been to church with us in probably 2-3 months. She she says she doesn't know what God she believes in, and I'm hoping she means what about God, not what God.
Sure, sure.
Can I just ask real quick on that? Teachers here that deal with older kids, do you find that most kids go through some period of time where they have these questions? I mean, whether it's at 12 or 13 or 15 or 17 or 22, is there a point in almost every kid's life where they actually question this?
I would say yes.
In the majority, okay.
And I would say there's nothing wrong with it.
Okay.
It's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy for them to do that.
But the worry is, if it's just a phase, and someone could guarantee me,
Yeah.
she'll come back on her own. That would be one thing. That would be like sit and watch and wait. But when you don't know, what if it gets worse? What if Satan has her? Not that she's following Satan, but if he's pulled her away from Jesus, that's bad enough.
Kim, here's what I needed to learn to do. There's Christopher. I needed to let him go.
And pray.
Because God, and pray that God will reveal himself to them. Somebody gonna say something?
Oh, I had two. Well, the first I thought as you're talking about that, I think of what happened that made her, like, what, you might not know the answer, but to me, I think of right away, like, what happened in her life? It's probably something that you didn't even know, that, like, there was to me, it sounds like a switch.
Yeah.
So if she was here, what made her move?
It shocked us because it was just like, 3 or 4 Sundays in a row, she didn't want to come to church with us. And she'd say, she didn't get to sleep till 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever. So finally Jim was like, okay, she's not going to go to church, then she's not going where she wants to go either. And when I said that to her, she ran upstairs with, why are you holding this against me? Because I don't believe the way you do. Well, that shocked the hell out of me because I had no idea that this had gone on, in her life. And
How old is she?
15. I don't know where that happened. I mean, it's not like something bad happened. I feel God abandoned her. She seemed like, of my 3 kids, the one that would have been most close to God.
But you don't even know what could be happening.
No.
I mean,
Something just came to me while she was talking and all that, because I'm sitting here thinking and actually praying. And actually, I think when it first started is when we switched and came to LFA. That's not a bad thing.
Because
but we were
got
Catholics.
devoted.
We were Catholics, and so we were going to the Sunday Mass every week. It's the same thing: stand up, kneel down, sit, replay, and it just wasn't filling any of us. And then when we became familiar with LFA, and it was such a big positive thing in our life, and changed a lot of things and revived a lot of things in us. All of a sudden, I'm thinking it was such a big change, and she saw what happened. I think that's what she might be rejecting. Is that all of a sudden, when it was really just every Sunday we went to church and that was it, now that there's a lot more every day in our life and so more excitement and all, I just have a feeling that shocked her, and her reaction is to turn it off, because we started pushing her, which may be good or bad, whatever. We started pushing her. We wanted her to just start to jump right in and get into the youth groups, and she rejected that right away. And then it just built from there.
It might have also shocked the devil. He may be, oh wait, I have this family now that's coming closer to God. Let me try to pull something away from them.
Who can I get?
Yeah.
Is it?
So it's Nate's fault.
Proper? Is it proper to actually? You were talking about. It's a good question. I agree with that. Is it good to actually go down that path? I mean, at some point you got to trust that God will reveal Himself. Well, let's go challenge that and say, okay, she said she's not sure of who she believed. God said, well, let's find out which one you believe in. Whatever other questions she's having. So, well, let's go find out.
Because what I did is I sat down with her and I told her, I said, when I was, say, 10 to 15, I went through a spot. Never did I ever say I could turned away from God. But I guess that was the stirring that I actually desired a bigger relationship with God, because I would come home from church and I'd be like, I don't even think I was paying attention the whole time. And in the Catholic Church, you know, it's the same sayings, the same responses, the same, that I truly went and left. I said all I was supposed to say and I did all the things I was supposed to do, but I was really tuned out. I was on autopilot, you know. And I said, you know, I see these people that have this great faith. Why don't I? Why am I not drawn? Why do I not feel? Why do I still feel church as an obligation? So I'm telling her, you know, I went through that. Maybe this is all that is for you, and you just need to be inspired by something in your life, you know. But she's just completely pushed back.
Carissa, any wisdom?
I just have thoughts.
Go ahead.
It's wisdom or not. I think that there's a lot of I need to find out the answer, or like I need to know. And I think there's not questioning or waiting and saying, like, God, what do you say about this? What, like, give us opportunities to either ask her, like what are like, where did this come from? Not in an accusatory kind of a way of like, why aren't you doing what we want you to do? But like help us to know you. Help us to, like, I want to know where you're coming from and what's happening with you. So God, give us opportunities to be able to ask those kinds of questions, and just opportunities to, I mean, like, when we ask God, He gives us wisdom, and just opportunities of like, God, help us to know like what to do, or what, instead of I have to try to figure this out, asking God, say, what can we do? Is there something we can do? Or are there other people that you can put in her life that, like, this is a time, I'm sorry guys, but kids don't listen to their parents in this.
I know,
like,
myself, I pulled myself out of the situation and said to her, you need to find somebody you can talk to. And she said, no, I'll talk to you if I need, no, you need to find somebody that you're actually gonna go and talk to.
Ask God.
And we actually got help. We met, I took her to Tammy Bowen here.
But I mean, yeah, just ask God, like, put people in her life,
just
that,
get somebody
that like, and trust that, you know what I mean? Trust that God cares about your child more than you could ever do, and asking Him, like, oh God, like, I know that you do this, and like, put somebody in her life that understands what she's walking through, or can speak to her at this time of her life. They don't always not listen to their parents, and they don't always do that forever. So it will be a point that they can come back and say, oh, you know, you guys had a lot of wisdom, but it's not now like that. But like, trust that God has other people for them to hear from.
7:10 is the youth group is very low key. Maybe she won't do youth group, or maybe she'll do the first Friday of every month. Volunteering in the nursery. You don't have to be in the service, but would you? I need people to help in the nursery, so she's with babies. Because in the nursery, they're hearing the word of God. Right. I mean, so it's so less intimidating. Would you come anyway? I want you to not be home alone, but come with me. You can be part of the nursery while we listen to the service, and you can just volunteer. We got to exchange numbers.
Just one. When I came to know Christ, He just turned me all around, and I immediately went from not having any clue what I was going to do, with the exception of going to Vietnam. I had no clue what I was going to do at all, and then I wanted to go into the ministry. When I told my father, he went over to the phone, called my uncle in California. I was living in Connecticut, and he sent me out to California to live with my uncle because I was involved in some kind of a cult. Okay, about 3 years later, my parents both accepted Christ as their Savior. And when I talked to my dad called and told me on the phone that he had gone down to the pastor of the church I was going to, and he had led them to Christ. I said, "How in the world did that happen?" and he said to me, "We watched your life, and we realized that this was a way of life and not just some passing fad." So I would just encourage you, Jim and Kim, live your Christianity, love Jesus with all the heart, soul, mind, and strength, and be available to her when she wants to talk about it, but just be a testimony to her. Let me pray for us, and then I'll kick you out of here because you got 2 minutes to get sent. Father, I thank you for these people, and I thank you for you, and I thank you that you love us. I thank you that you've asked us to be parents, and we're never going to stop being parents. So help us, Father, to trust you. There are some of us, probably all of us sitting here, there's something we need to let go of and let you. And so, Father, we're going to trust you. We're going to trust you to work in the hearts and lives of the young people that you've put under our care. And Father, help us to learn what it means to splash you on other people and to have you at the center of our universe and to have you in a place in our lives where we love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Thank you, Jesus.